Welcome, everybody, to the weekly Body Image Issues and Disordered Eating webinar. I'm John Taylor. I'm the owner at White Pine Recovery. Alicia Taylor, Associate Clinical Mental Health Counselor. Did I get those words in the right
You
order?
did.
She is our expert today. And she does this weekly webinar where she talks about all things related to body image, disordered eating, essentially a mindset around your body and food that won't make you feel crazy. Is that a good way to say that?
Yeah, agreed.
She's one of our talented therapists here at White Pine Recovery. In addition to her work with body image issues and disordered eating, Alicia's a very talented couples therapist. Um, she's pretty much good at everything that she does in the therapy world. So we're very lucky to have her today. And what is your topic?
Um, I had a hard time wording this, but hopefully this comes out okay. The topic today is how we talk about food and our bodies affects our kids. Is that clear? Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, if I were to ask you what a diet is, and I'm not talking about like, animals have diets, humans have diets. I mean like the four-letter word that we know to be a diet. How would you define that? I'm asking you. Sorry, John. I'm asking you.
Oh, how would we define a
How would you
diet?
define it? Uh-huh.
I mean, I would say like a set of rules about good foods and bad foods that gets you to some kind of outcome. More luscious hair, more curves, less curves, more muscle, less muscle, but whatever you're going for.
Okay. I think that's a pretty decent definition. Um, so I want to talk about how any form of dieting is problematic for children, especially. Yeah, so diets are bad and problematic, in my opinion, for probably everybody, but especially for children. Um, and I appreciated this definition that a dietitian gave of what a diet includes. She said cutting out food groups, eliminating your favorite food because it is perceived as bad, counting calories or using another counting system, intentionally skipping meals, ignoring hunger signals, doing a juice cleanse, starting a meal kit, which that one was a little confusing. I'm guessing that there are some meal kits out there that you can order that are geared towards specific diets. So that's what I think that means. Eating for your blood type, which I think is another type of diet that I'm not super familiar with. Diets based on genetic testing, also not familiar with that. Buying and consuming supplements and protein shakes in place of food. So that was her list of what diet behavior includes. Um, and as adults, we can do whatever we want. We that's I guess the great thing about being an adult. Um, but we have to be very clear about the effects that those influences have on kids. And that's what I want to talk about today. Um, the fact is that it is common for dieting behaviors to lead to some level of disordered eating, um, if not a full-blown eating disorder. But it's very common that it starts somewhere well-intentioned that someone thinks this will improve the way my relationship with food and the way that I interact with it. And it often leads to very unhealthy behaviors and relationships with food. Um, so I want to be clear, there are exceptions to diet changes when connected to like a food allergy or a disease, such as like celiac. There are things that you are allergic to or your body simply can't process or it makes you very sick. Those are clear exceptions. But I want to talk about even like diabetes and diabetics, type 1 and type 2. Usually people interpret that as like you have to eliminate carbohydrates. Um, and that's simply not true either. And in fact, if you have a, I would recommend seeing a dietitian who is trained in anti-diet work that is an expert with diabetes because be very, they will be very careful to not lead the person that they're treating into disordered eating, that they can teach them how to maybe modify some things without eliminating food groups because it's not necessary. There's a balance there, even when it comes to something like diabetes. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I was just thinking about when you were talking about like we adults can do whatever they want, but we have to be careful about the messaging. And I was just reflecting on how you tell me if this is accurate thinking. Um, Eating disorders are a really interesting confluence of like socialization, anxiety, trauma. Like there's so many factors that go in, and um, it seems like a place that is maybe more prone to fixation than other aspects of life.
Yeah, so we're at some point I'm gonna have a guest host on that is more expert in these areas, but OCD is like a very common component, or not component as in like everybody has OCD, but it's very common to be comorbid with eating disorders because there's such a sense of control that you can have in like my life is probably like things are not working in my life or I'm not getting what I want. And if I adhere by these diets or these things that everybody is telling me is going to make my life better, then I can control the outcome in my life because I feel so out of control in so many ways. And OCD is like a form of anxiety that makes you feel like you have a sense of control or semblance of control in your life. And that can show up with a high anxiety um, mental illness, like an eating disorder, right? Um, yeah, people are just seeking some relief and some feeling of control because life can feel really out of control at times. And eating disorders don't happen when someone is completely like mentally well and meaning like usually there's depression happening or like life circumstances that are really hard, anxiety, things like that, um, is where eating disorders are born from. But I also think the influence of our culture tells us that like we can't be satisfied with our lives if we don't look a certain way. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it just on your topic, I think it's one of those things that we may not think normally to be real careful about, but it can have a definite downriver cascade effect for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Um, so these dieting leading to some level of disordered eating or eating disorders um, is really common. And I'll say that eating disorders are the third most common chronic disease among children. Number three. That's huge. Third most common chronic disease among children, um, which is tragic on its own to know that it's that prevalent, but it says nothing of the long-term health, both mental and physical consequences that come from an eating disorder. Um, because like they may have a serious eating disorder and then are able to overcome it, and that's really great, but there's consequences. Um, that often show up along with this. So iron and calcium deficiencies are really huge, among other things. Um, you're you're not getting the nutrients you need. And when you're a kid, all you're doing is growing, right? And so if you don't have these basic building blocks of growth, um, there's going to be consequences to that. So bone health is poor. There can be a lot of bone damage. Loss of a menstrual cycle for girls um, is a very common repercussion. Stunted growth because it interferes with puberty. You can pretty much stop puberty if you're not getting the nutrition that you need. And there's high rates of anxiety, depression, and social isolation along with these. Um, I love how one author put this. They said the entire premise of diet culture is that most people aren't in the appropriate bodies, and their lives won't be complete until they achieve a specific shape or weight. That's the premise. Like your life is not where it could be, and it's not what it should be until you reach this imaginary or this body type that you're seeing everywhere and made to believe is um, most important. Um, so let's talk about media influences on kids. This one was really disturbing. I mean, and this was a campaign going on in 2011, and so I couldn't even find the website link to it anymore, which is good. It's really good that they took that down. But the fact is, like, damage was done for that generation of kids, that was experiencing this. So in 2011, Georgia supposedly was the second most obese state in the United States. And we talked about the word obese in previous webinars and why that term is problematic and where it comes from, and the like scale where we get those terms from is the BMI, correct? And the BMI doesn't account for actual health markers and measures like blood work and things like that. It doesn't account for people's muscle mass, the way that their bodies are shaped. So Georgia supposedly had the second most obese kids in the United States, but like I would also question what that means. So they started this campaign called Strong for Life Anti-Obesity Campaign. And it featured images of boys and girls in bigger bodies looking sad. Like I saw pictures of it and there was just this kid sitting there like, my life is hopeless. And he was a darling child, but his life was not really worth it because he was in a bigger body. So they had billboards all around the state of girls and boys in bigger bodies looking sad and saying things like, let's fight. And it's in there, anti-obesity. So if we're saying that people are obese and we're putting the word anti in front of it, what does that equate to? Tell me what comes to mind for you when you have anti and obese put together.
I mean, that's the you are. We're against you. Your
I
body,
am
like
anti you as a
the essence of
person.
you is wrong. We got to change that.
Yeah, let's get rid like I don't want to take it too far, but I think about like the Nazi regime and when they were like, we've just got to eliminate all the problematic people here so that we can have a pure race. Like, how do you choose who's worthy and who's not? And like it's just so layered. If you really look at how like it's gross. It's really icky. And they were like, we're on a campaign to make things better by getting rid of fat kids. Like that's essentially what they were saying, right? So, there was that. And then some of the quotes that they put out there, probably on the billboards and things, was chubby kids may not outlive their parents. So fear mongering for sure. Like they're probably gonna die way before their parents. Like
Gosh. Well, and
because
like
we
what
use the BMI.
where do we put the line for kid? This morning I was at the park with my two youngest kids, and there was this dad with his three little girls, and um the youngest, they told us she was 8 months old, and she looked like she was just made out of marshmallow sections.
Mhm.
Like and
Which is
and
how our little girl was as
oh
well.
my gosh, it's adorable. It's one of the best qualities of babies, of children, right? And one of the sisters had said something that I thought she said, like, oh, she doesn't eat very much. And I said, she doesn't eat very much. And she said, no, she's 8 months. But I'm looking at this little baby who's perfect, right? And chubby, just like a baby could be, should be. And like, where do we draw the line with kids in that? Chubby kids won't outlive their
Well,
parents. If you have a chubby baby,
hopefully we start applying the BMI scale to infants, right? And then we
why
can really
not?
know
We
what
apply
babies
it
are
to everyone
healthy.
else. We apply it to everyone else without any regard for whether we should or not.
Well, I mean, now that you say that, they have the growth charts, right? And sometimes it gets a little ridiculous how rigid some doctors can be about that. A lot of doctors are nuanced and understand like kids are all different. But I had this experience with my daughter who is bigger for her age. She's like more like a 7-year old, at least in clothing sizes. And so she's always been like really high on the charts for height and weight. And her I don't know what checkup it was, if it was like 2 or 3. So she's in the upper 90s percentile for height and weight. I'm not worried about her yet. And was like, I'm not worried about her ever. Like, and for me, like that's a red flag if doctors talk in those terms. But they do apply, they're not using the BMI yet. I don't know. They do start using it when they're still kids, though. When they're 2 and 3, they're not, but they still can start using language that's problematic. Anyway, so, oh, and then the next quote was, big bones didn't make me this way, big meals did. On a picture of this very cute but sad looking child.
This is
So
real too, folks. This is not parody.
yeah, no, this is real. I saw the advertisement pictures of it. Yeah, it does seem like a parody. It honestly does seem like an SNL sketch, right? Especially with those quotes, for
Yeah.
sure. And I want to get to the point where we all think that's laughable because it is. Um, So then another thing in the media, and gosh, I hate to say this because I am a fan of Michelle Obama. I think she's done a lot of good things, but she, I think, really missed the mark on, do you have a guess of what I'm going to say?
She's going to be talking about obese kids,
Is
obviously.
she is. Yep, it
Yeah.
was during when her husband was the president. The Let's Move campaign, on the surface, I'm all about people getting more physical activity. That's great. The problem was not that they were encouraging movement, it's that they encourage monitoring of children's BMI.
Mm.
So again, we were focused on um, an arbitrary, unhelpful measure of health. Um, so Linda Bacon, who was the author, is the author of Health at Every Size. She said in reference to the Let's Move campaign that she felt that it did more harm than good because it shamed kids in bigger bodies and then sent the message to thin kids that movement and a healthy, balanced diet didn't matter. Well, my BMI is good. I don't need to worry about it. It's putting uh it's putting the focus of health on all of the wrong places. So that was a real miss, and I think that it had detrimental consequences because we can't underestimate like who heard it and how in the ways that it possibly affected them and the shame that may have been put on kids who were in bigger bodies at that time. Um, and then in 2019, Weight Watchers launched a weight loss app for kids called Kurbo. And I checked and it still exists. But their disclaimer is that it was marketed as a family healthy lifestyle and behavior modification program rather than an adult diet. You can wrap it in any package you want. It's still diet culture. It's still focused on kids learning to be very controlled around food and scared of food and not trusting their bodies to give them the right signals, et cetera, et cetera. So
Wow.
there's like the kind of indirect influences that kids can get from media, and then there's the very direct ones that we just talked about. Um, so yeah, there was there was something that I wanted to show. I get indignant about this stuff because this is the stuff I'm passionate about. But I was just scrolling through reels and um I sent it to Johnny and I was like, this pisses me off. Um and because I see things so differently than maybe I used to, and I notice things and that some people would just not think twice about. So I'm gonna share it and then you and I can talk about it, Johnny. So, how do I share? I was
You hit the share icon at the bottom and then do share
okay.
sound and optimize for video sharing. Then
Okay.
select the window you want to share.
Okay. I want to share nope, I want to share that. Share sound, optimize video for sharing. I'll get better at this someday, y'all. Um, will that work?
Yeah, it should.
Okay. Okay, here we go. POV, point of view. Your wife takes cheat day very
Had enough food over there?
No, the internet is already calling me chubby.
It's your cheat day, right?
Don't judge me, okay? I love food.
Oh, it's gonna keep playing now. Sorry. I stopped share, but it's
Had enough food over there?
okay. All right. What are your thoughts?
I mean, first, I'm looking at how voraciously she's eating, which there's not a problem with that. But I wonder on this diet, how many days and how much time every day is she really, really hungry because her body's not getting what it needs?
Or she feels like everything is forbidden
Yeah,
except for this magical day when it's not.
got to
So,
pack it in while you can.
yeah, so I don't like it's hard to show videos of like individual people. She's a very darling person. I'm sure she's a great person. That's not my point. It's the point that like it says cheat day
Hmm.
and that it's a cheat too. And she said, I love food. Good.
Great.
So so why does it have to be this cheat day? And this is where I'm not saying she was binging. I don't know how much. I mean, she had like a plate of food here and a burrito in her hand. Whatever. Again, the particulars don't matter, but diets, diet mentality often leads to binging behaviors, um, which can be very um, unhealthy and problematic. Um, and then leads into a shame cycle where you restrict, restrict, restrict until you can't restrict anymore because we're actually not like Our brains don't work that way. It's not sustainable. Um, and so this whole like things, this food is on off limits only makes us want it more, right? And it's
And
forefront of our
that
brain.
that's a neurological fact. We learn this in the work that we do. Anything that you prohibit, try to shut down, try to not allow into your mind, it leads to obsession. Like neurologically, that's just a phenomenon. It's how the human brain is wired.
It's not because you don't have willpower.
No, it's actually the overt restriction rather than the processing, like with this process, your relationship with that food. Get into why it looks the way that it does and all of that. Like welcome your relationship with that in that actually will increase the what's the word I'm looking for? Increase the chances that you have the relationship to whatever it is, food, sex, whatever that you want to have, versus I'm doing this with certain things, because that literally, like, you're just asking your brain to create an obsession over it.
Yeah. And when you invite that like understanding and it doesn't become this like get thee hence Satan
Hmm.
sort of thing. The power is not there
Hmm.
in the same way. And then you can create this like very positive, enjoyable, pleasurable, healthy and balanced relationship in its place.
For sure.
Because I like food tastes good for a reason. Like we need to keep fueling ourselves and we need to be motivated to keep doing that. And I think on a lot of deep levels that pleasure from food like feeds us at a soul level, you know? Um, so those are the like media influences. And again, I would be curious, like I, can't talk to each of you, but I would be curious, like if you thought anything really, I mean, I know I set it up, but if you were to have been scrolling and come across that, if you would have just been like, or like thought much about it or not, because I think things are so commonplace, these sorts of diet messages, that they just kind of wash over us and we don't really look into them. Um, okay. So now, like we've talked about media, but now I want to talk about like um the place that I think it counts the most, and that's the people in your sphere of influence. And I want to be clear that all of us are affected by this, and all of us are victims of it. And so if we like hear stuff that's like, oh, I do that or I've done that, like so much grace from me and hopefully so much grace for yourself because you were a victim and like you were taught certain things. You were taught that your value was not intrinsic, oftentimes that it was more about like how you present yourself, the size of your body, etc. Um, and so this is just like hopefully we can all do better as we learn more and understand more. So I hope we go in with that mindset with the stuff that I'm going to say. Commenting on your body in negative ways and talking about the food that you eat in negative ways or why you're choosing this and not that um, affects how kids feel about their own bodies and their relationship with food. It makes them start thinking if they weren't thinking in the first place that like maybe I should be monitoring this more. Maybe I should be more concerned about the food I'm eating. Maybe my body isn't okay. Um, it's it they those little ears are really good listeners and they take in more than we even realize. Um, some ways you might unintentionally teach disordered eating, among other things, to the children that are around you. So here's some things to avoid that I highly recommend. Um, do not over control what and when a child eats. Children are really good at recognizing their body signals. And as adults who have grown up in diet culture, we're probably not really good. And so we think our job is to manage our kids and when they're eating and what they're eating. And obviously, like if you are making dinner and your kids are like, "Can I have an ice cream sandwich?" which is common, right? I wouldn't be like, "Yeah, eat the ice cream sandwich." I would probably say, "We're about to eat dinner. Let's have that first and see what you have room for." So, like, try and help them with balance, but no, like the fridge is locked, the pantry's locked. Give them access, give them options that you feel comfortable with, and let them decide when they're hungry so that they keep trusting their cues. Um, because when you don't trust your cues, they start to go away, and we don't know how to read our bodies anymore. And we want to preserve that for our kids so that they recognize hunger and fullness and can respect it. Um, warn them, do not warn them that they may gain weight by eating certain types of food. Do not make weight gain or body changes seem unhealthy or unwarranted, especially around puberty. Weight gain is very, very normal. Some kids, that's their body type, and some kids, they gain weight right before puberty, and then as puberty comes along and they grow, they thin out. Some kids, their body type maybe doesn't thin out, but do not make it seem like their body's doing something wrong, um, or make them feel like they're wrong. Um, do not label foods as good or bad. I think we've talked about that before, but food has no intrinsic moral value. Food is amoral. So let's stop labeling it as good and bad. Um, do not ban certain types of food from your home, even if you're like, I just really don't want to be tempted by that thing. Like, just just if your kids request certain foods that they really like try it out, buy it that week. Don't make your fears their fears. Um, don't incentivize diet behaviors such as cutting out sugar with some sort of reward. That sets them up for a very unhealthy relationship with food. Um, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you clean up your language around this stuff. So think of it as like, I don't want naughty words to come out of my mouth around my kids, and these are naughty words when it's talking about food and why it's good or bad, or why your body is good or bad. Like, let's at the very least just not talk about it. Um, and at the most, talk about the ways that you're really grateful for your body and what it's done for you, and that you're grateful to have access to food and that it nourishes you and that you enjoy it and it's yummy. Um, it shouldn't be minimized how much your kids are affected by the ways their parents display their own unhealthy relationships with food in their body. Um, there's a lot of ways that we influence our kids, and I want this to be one that we can influence a new generation to be different and to think of things and differently than we did, so that they can spend their time on so many more important things, like the stuff that we could get done if we weren't so worried about like our body and the food that we're consuming. Um, any thoughts before I move on? Because then I want time for comments. Okay.
Nope, keep going.
Okay. So, um, if you could do this, Johnny, if you could look up the book Being You, the body image book for boys. Um,
It's a good one.
okay, you're familiar?
I think I read it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
What do you want me to do
it's
with it?
I just put like a link to it just so I'm just trying to be better at having resources for people. So um I thought I wrote down that it's for ages 12 plus for the boys. But something that was written in the description I wanted to point out, it said from early childhood, boys often feel pressured to be athletic and muscular. But what impact does this have on physical and mental well-being through their teens and beyond? Worryingly, a third of teen boys are trying to bulk up due to body dissatisfaction. Boys and men account for 25% of eating disorder cases. Um, I want to point that out because 25% is a quarter. Like it's a significant amount. And I think a lot of times we've minimized how boys and men feel about their bodies and how they experience diet culture. And so maybe the next time the webinar will be more focused on boys and men's experience surrounding this stuff. But it's significant. So that's a good resource if you have older boys. It's not so much like a picture book, um, though there are some good ones.
It's it's very readable and digestible, and then it has like
It's like a
reflect on
workbook too,
this.
isn't it?
Yeah, reflect on
Yeah.
this, journal about this, have a conversation about that. It's a good book.
Yeah. And then, and the reason I know about these is because I was listening to a podcast with the author. But then she also did a body image book for girls called Love Yourself and Grow Up Fearless, which I really like that title. Um, but you just like get on Amazon and look up body image books for kids. Like there's this book I'm seeing that says that's titled Bodies Are Cool. I have a book that I got when I had a daughter because I was a little worried about her and just because girls were influenced from the time we're tiny. It's called B is for Bellies, and that's the book that we have. Um, so anyway, that is the content that I have. I just like, let's do it different. Let's do it different for the kids growing up now, where this is not in the forefront of their mind at all times.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent content. Thank you so much. If you have a question, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. And that will send it directly to me. We did have a question come in, and
Okay.
you talked about this, but maybe you could talk about the importance of the messaging at home here. So somebody asked, I'm wondering if the epidemic of eating disorders in kids is coming from influences in or out of the home. I know you talked about both.
Mhm.
Could you say maybe a little bit more about why the environment in the home is so important?
That I think kids have some degree of a concept that like social media and things like that, it doesn't feel like completely real, um, and completely familiar. And so they could be like, well, that doesn't necessarily apply. And I'm not saying it's not influential, but it doesn't maybe feel as like real and close to them. But think about it, like if you're just from the time you're born, you're just hearing these positive messages about or neutral messages about bodies and there's no comments to you about your body, whether it's good or bad, and food is just abundant and you get to choose and you get to eat when you want to eat and um, you already have a really strong template when you go out into the world and have other influences. So that when you go out into the world and you hear other things, it's like, what are they even talking about? and it feels unrelatable. And not to say that none of those messages can get in, but like you have a pretty solid foundation to work with.
It's interesting, and I bet this research would carry over into these attitudes. But in Utah, they have something called Parents Empowered, and what they're essentially looking at is the research says that parents' attitudes about underage drinking are largely adopted by their children. So talk about it. Like don't just cross your fingers or hope they got the message or hope they can find their way. Like talk about it. It influences. And I think in this case, it's either way, right? The influence from the parents has a huge, or the attitudes of the parents have huge influence on kids. And there's a lot of crazy messaging out there about everything. And so having the home be a place where it's safe, it's neutral to positive, it's not a place you have to, I don't know, be confused, feel like you got to pull your hair out or be a certain way. It's a refuge from a very confusing world.
Yeah.
Um, we had another comment, and they said, I think these media examples, these campaigns are shaming the kids and the parents of the kids. What's the role of shame you see, Alicia, in like the development and the healing from issues like this?
Well, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about shame in the work that like with couples work and the work that you do is specifically, well, and I do too, I guess, with betrayal and things like addiction. Like shame is an emotion that tends to be demotivating. Um, and it makes the definition is that I am bad. Um, when you feel shame, you feel like you as a person at your core are bad. And when you feel that way and you don't feel like you have any value, you you're not going to believe that you can contribute or do something different or do better. So when you're putting shame on people for their bodies, and largely like a lot of that stuff is not something we can control, then they're going to just punish themselves into trying to be something and sometimes even someone different because who they are is bad when you put shame on
I
and
I
define
will
things as shameful.
I will say shame is a fantastic short-term motivator, but it generally doesn't lead to good things. So in the work we do with couples, one of the maxims we use is, do you want to feel better or do you want to do better? And I think I mean, if you want to look at it as gains, there's short-term gains that can be made by dieting and obsessing over this or that. But cumulatively over time, and correct me if I'm wrong, I see this like tripping up effect. And what you trade off for those short-term gains is at least long-term peace of mind and sanity in your own body, which you have until the day you die. Like there's no changing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to a good point to make because shame I think leads to panic responses. Like I cannot be in this body in this state doing this thing for any long. I have to immediately change something. And so like what is that? Like I'm going to starve myself. I'm going to make myself throw up. I'm going to go on this extreme diet or whatever it is. And it's because I like it's a panic response. It's like this is not safe. Instead of the opposite of shame is like I'm okay and I can take my time on this. I'm a good person. I can connect with who I really am, and it leads to a road of peace rather than panic. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
amen. We don't have any other questions or comments coming in.
dang it, guys, I like the questions and comments.
I think that's a pretty good note to leave on.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Alicia. As always, fantastic content, really thought provoking. Thank you everybody for attending and participating. Um, please check out some of the other videos if you haven't seen the previous presentations that Alicia's done on YouTube. And on our website, www.whitepinerecovery.com, if you go over to services and groups, you can see the schedule for these webinars and the link there. So if there's somebody who you think would enjoy this, benefit from this, be interested, please feel free to share that link so that they can join us each week as well. So
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.